Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Superboy the Legacy podcast. And today we have an episode idea by our very own Chris Jacobsen. We're going to be talking about story threads that Superboy left open and never actually paid off. I think it's an interesting topic. This will probably be a shorter episode than some of the other commentaries we've done, but yeah, we were just starting to talk about it, and I thought, screw it, I'll hit record. We might as well just record this now.
Yep.
You know, we may as well. We've got a little bit of time, so
Yep.
yeah. So why don't you bring up for everyone watching the initial story thread that you thought would be a good one to kick us off with? Because I agree, it's great.
In a rewatch, that I did about a year ago, before the show got put on Tubi, we get to season 2, and the episode Super Menace, where Superboy goes evil when they create red kryptonite, and he teams up with Metallo. At the end of the episode,
how crazy is it, by the way? Before we do go on, how crazy is it that we only had one red kryptonite episode in 4 seasons?
Yeah,
I don't know if I was writing the show if I'd be able to resist doing a second one. I certainly know that season 5 is going to have a red kryptonite story. I mean, I think we've actually got 2 red kryptonite stories in mind.
Yeah.
Different types of red kryptonite, golden age version and the more modern version of red kryptonite. We're going to, different properties for both. But sorry, continue.
Yep. So at the end of the episode, when Superboy and Metallo break into the lab, there's a chunk of kryptonite sitting there, regular green K, and Metallo says, "Ooh, with this, I could be twice as powerful." And Superboy says, "Or twice as dead." He turns the device on and turns both the kryptonite that's on the table as well as the kryptonite in his chest red. So, of course, Metallo is, fallen to the ground, powerless. And at the end of the episode, just after Superboy, comes back to himself, you see Metallo kind of pulling himself up onto the little stand where the red K is, and he's grabbing it, and he's got this fiendish smile on his face. Like he's going to take it with him and use it again, but
he never actually did.
Yeah, nothing ever happened with it. It's like the writers completely forgot about that.
Maybe they just figured that they'd already established that it doesn't power Metallo's bionic, whatever you call it, like his robot arms and stuff.
Yeah.
Even though it's very clearly just telephone wire and stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe they just figured because they'd already established that it doesn't power his stuff that they didn't have another story in mind, maybe, or who knows? It's certainly a strange one.
Yeah, but during the period in the early 2000s when Richard Donner came on to write Action Comics with Jeff Johns, they reintroduced Metallo, and Metallo has now 4 pieces of kryptonite in his chest. The green stuff, of course, to power him. Red K to cause mutations, blue K to affect Bizarro, and gold to temporarily remove powers. So they could have done something similar with it.
It's definitely an interesting question. I wonder if it's worth, when we come back to season 5 with your Metallo 2.0, maybe you could find a use for the red K, maybe.
I was thinking about doing something about that.
I know that you had a red K storyline. You had an idea for a story already.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I mentioned a moment ago, we have 2 different red kryptonite stories in mind for season 5. At the moment, I don't know if my one will happen. We may just do Chris's. But one of them, it's the red K that turns Superboy evil, and the other is the more classic version that causes random changes in Superman, like each time he's affected by it. Sometimes he'll lose his memory, sometimes he'll turn green. It was completely random, which I think is a really fun way to do it.
And
Um,
one thing you can say about Lois and Clark, they
mm,
actually did the random effects with Red K when they introduced it. I mean, the first time he became apathetic.
yeah. He just
Second,
didn't care anymore. Like it's almost like Superman 3. People say it's Superman turned evil, but basically he just sort of became a drunk who didn't care.
yeah,
And that apathy was just sanitized just a little bit more for Lois and Clark, and he was just, you're right, absolutely just pure apathy, just doesn't care. Just, yeah, he becomes quite selfish, and yeah, it's an interesting way to take it, and I just like that parallel. But sorry, continue.
yeah. And then the second time Lois and Clark did it, it transferred his powers to Lois,
Hmm.
and then a bunch of other people. One of which being Shelley Long from Cheers, worst actress ever.
I like Shelley Long. I liked her in Cheers anyway. I can't say that I've seen her in anything else apart from maybe Lois and Clark, but I
Yeah,
didn't think she was terrible in it or anything. She's just,
she's just not that great of an actress, my opinion.
maybe it's just the role,
Yeah,
the role she takes. I thought she was great in Cheers, but I mean,
yeah,
Cheers was just a great show. It'd be pretty difficult to kind of suck in that show, really, wouldn't it?
yeah.
With
And then I think,
writing, it has pretty fantastic writing, and writing can save most performances if it's good enough.
yeah. And then, of course, the final time that they had Red K, it was supercharging his powers, where he had no control.
Mm.
So,
I think it's a good way to take it because it stops each Red K story from feeling samey.
yeah,
Um, which is why I'm thinking that I might just drop my Red K story from season 5 and just you can just do yours, because I think you've got a more interesting angle to approach it from. Um, but yeah, I do wonder with what the writers had in mind when they didn't bring the Red K back, because clearly, obviously, they must have thought that it was worth leaving open. Maybe they thought, well, we'll leave it open just in case we have an idea, perhaps. But
yeah,
obviously, they never did. But I would have loved to have seen another Red Kryptonite story. But oh well.
yeah. You know, um, of course, the Yellow Perry. I mean, that there's, I mean, look at the ending of that episode. The puppet of Gazook. He's still in the puppet. The puppet's
Hmm.
eyes are opening. So obviously, they had plans to bring her back. You know,
I'm guessing just a lot changed between seasons, because obviously season 2 and then season 3 had completely different showrunners. Is it Mark Jones who was the showrunner on season 2?
I believe so. Yeah.
And yeah, because like I just remember his name because obviously he commented on a video of ours recently, which was really
Right.
flattering. But it's obviously he was the showrunner on season 2, but not 3 and 4, which I hope that was by choice for him, because I thought he did a good job with season 2. It's a definite improvement to season 1.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wonder if that's just the fact that both the Super Menace thing and Gazook, maybe that's just a result of one showrunner had an idea for how to bring them back next year, but then when a new showrunner was appointed, they just didn't want to do that. But
Yeah. And then, of course, Mix's Pitlick. I mean, the end of Mr. and Mrs. Superboy. He says, "So now I'm going to float around the fifth dimension for 90 days."
yeah, and then we
You
never
know,
saw him again outside of the tie-in comic.
yeah,
Obviously, yeah, we have. We've already kind of changed that. He did return in season 5 now, but it certainly was a lot longer than 90 days from his last appearance. But yeah, I would have
yeah,
loved to have seen. Like, Mixie's just such a fan favorite character that I quite happily could have had a story with him every season. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe they just, I don't know, maybe because season 3 has a slightly darker tone to seasons 1 and 2. Maybe they just didn't feel Mixie would fit anymore. But I think Mixie fits anywhere because the whole point is that he's absurd. Like,
yeah,
you can't worry about him not fitting the style of your show, because the whole point is that he's not from that universe. He's literally an imp from another dimension. He's not gonna fit in.
Yeah,
But
and you know, Michael J. Pollard, he was such a fantastic actor. You know,
it's funny. Michael J. Pollard, I really love in the role as Mixie. I think he plays almost everything with a slight sort of like wink to camera. Like he almost plays it like it's almost like Mixie is getting. He's got such a short attention span that he's getting even bored of himself. So some of the
yes,
lines he's reading out, it's almost like he's bored and he's just constantly looking for something to entertain him. And I like that approach that he took. I don't know if that's what he was intending to do, but that's just how I always interpreted it. But
yeah,
I always thought he was great, and he almost plays it like a game show host in a few places, like especially in his first appearance. Like when he comes up, he's like, "I come from afar to make you a star," and it's like he does that whole thing, and he's like playing with Clark, and it's like when he meets him on the rooftop, he like has the text appear, and it's like he's almost playing the whole thing like it's a game show. But and maybe he was playing it in that way because they established that the people from his dimension just spend the whole time watching people in other dimensions for entertainment. Like they're watching Superboy because they think he's interesting.
yeah.
So
That's their form of TV.
yeah, so
Probably.
I wonder if that's why he played it that way, because in Mixie's eyes, people back home are watching. Like that's how I always took it anyway. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's just I just think Mixie was fantastic. Michael J. Pollard was great, and it's funny. Just I don't think I mentioned it to you, but literally last Christmas I rewatched Scrooged, Bill
right.
Murray's Scrooged, and Michael J. Pollard is in it. And as soon as I recognised it, I was like, "Wait, where do I?" Like immediately, I was like, "There's Michael J. Pollard, and he's directed by Richard Donner in this movie." Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I knew there's a reason Scrooged is like in my top 3 Christmas movies of all time. But yeah, I really got off topic there, but
that's fine. That's fine. Um, you know,
I'm just trying to think of some more like loose threads that were sort of left open and not really picked up again. I mean, you could say about a lot of the props and stuff that they would like take off the villains and stuff, like what happens with that, especially in the Bureau years. But you just assume that it's probably in a warehouse somewhere. It's just in storage, all that stuff. It's like the rock and the slime thing from Mindscape.
yeah.
Like, what happened to that in the end? Like, where is that
Well,
rock? It's probably just in.
the slime organism itself, just
It sort of
disintegrated.
disintegrated, but the rock is still there, and I don't know. It's just like little things. I'm sure the Bureau has a lot of props from previous episodes in their storerooms, but
Yeah.
so that's not that doesn't really count. But it's like little things like here's a question: like how did leaving Micro Boy back in time affect the timeline? Because surely all the history books are now the Wright brothers and Micro Boy.
Yeah.
Like it's so I would have loved to have seen an
Unless of
episode.
course, unless of course in that case, when it came down to doing stories and such, Hector just said he realized, being that he was a scientist from the future and he realized how his presence could affect the future. Maybe he just said to Orville and Wilbur, just don't mention me. I'm just say that one some guy working with us or something like that, or just
Yeah.
say it was just your idea.
Yeah, I mean that would help it, but I mean at the same time it's also implied that he's going to get with the Stacey Hyduck character from the past. I forget her name. Like their
Julianne.
Julianne, like the Wright brothers, is it their cousin or something, was it?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. It's like maybe she was gonna marry someone else, and now she's gonna marry Microboy at some point in the future, and it's like, how does that affect the timeline? And I just would have liked to have seen another episode, paying off. Just let us know what happened with some of these characters. So I think that would have been an interesting story. And
Yeah.
let's face it, Microboy's costume we've made fun of a lot, Like, okay, yeah, it's supposed to be homemade, as we said in the commentary, but I don't know. If they did another episode, especially in season 3 or 4, maybe they could have made him a new cow. But I don't know. I want to see another Micro Boy episode. That's just me,
Yeah,
though.
yeah. You know, we never got to see Knick Knack again outside the
Yeah,
comic.
Knick Knack would have been cool to do. Like, was Knick Knack's comic appearance like published after his last appearance in the show? Because I'm
Yep.
trying to.
And it was co-written by Gilbert Gottfried himself.
Oh, I knew that. Yeah, and it's like an origin story for him, isn't it? The not so nice origin. But Knick Knack, I'm guessing he didn't appear in what is it, Obituary for a Superhero?
No,
Because they had a bunch of cameos in that. For some reason, I kept thinking that Knick Knack was one of them, but obviously not.
no, he
Like,
wasn't.
It might have been nice to put him in there, but still, that's a terrible episode, anyways. I'm so glad that's not the finale.
Yeah, we all know how the story about that, how that worked out.
Maybe that's a future episode of this podcast. We'll just do the tale of. We've already done the tale of two pilots where we talked about Jewel of Technical and Countdown to Nowhere. Maybe we could do the a tale of two finales where we talk about both versions as well. I think that could be an interesting topic in the future. Let us know in the comments if you want us to talk about that. Any others? I mean, there are a ton of things that they could have paid back. I mean, I would have liked to have seen TJ come back at some point, but obviously we know why that didn't happen. They were trying to distance themselves from the first season at a certain point. But
yeah,
and also, they when TJ left, they basically said he'd gone to work with his father, and it might have been difficult to have TJ in it without going to Metropolis. So I can kind of see why that. I don't think that counts. Really,
although they did bring Andy back, for one episode in season.
They did, yeah. I would have liked to have seen them do something like that with TJ. Certainly,
Yeah.
I mean, the possibility was there. I just, like, and here's one a story thread. What happened with Clark's girlfriend from A Kind of Princess?
Right. All we know about Sarah is that she left because of what her father did.
Yeah, I mean, she basically she finds out, and she always kind of knew that her father was a mafia boss, but it's like she also thought that he would have her back, and it was that phone call when she was being held hostage, and the guy is like calling up to make demands and stuff, and he basically is just having none of it. And she's like crying, like, "Daddy, please, like, give him what he wants," and all this. And he's just like, "Go to hell." And it's just, no wonder she got pissed off at him. But it's just one of these things that I would have loved to have seen that character come back. I forget the actress's name just off the top of my
Julie
head.
McCullough.
That's it, Julie McCullough. And she was fantastic. I thought she did a really good job, and she had excellent chemistry with John Newton.
Yeah.
And of all the early season 1 episodes, that's one of the best ones in my opinion. And it's just, I would have loved to have seen that character come back, and they never did.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
But again, as you said, she was a season 1 character, and they were trying to distance themselves as much from season 1 as possible.
Definitely,
yeah.
Of
course, that's why I mentioned her in Metallo's Blaze of Glory. When we did that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, because it's one of the better characters, certainly one of the best guest stars from the first season. And let's face it, that was a very early episode as well. Like, typically, the earliest episodes of Superboy are typically known as the worst,
and yet that's one of the best.
Yeah, it's kind of an outlier. I think it's an episode that doesn't get nearly the credit that it's due. But yeah, I would love to have seen that come back. Like, what do you think she's up to now? Because I've always said that she's, as revenge against her father, would maybe take over the family business and have him killed or something eventually. I always saw her as eventually becoming the mob boss.
I really doubt that. Given how pissed off she was about what had happened with Casey, I would say that she goes completely, the complete opposite direction of that. Maybe she becomes a crusading, philanthropist type. Maybe she
Yeah,
works with the poor. Maybe she works with crime victims.
maybe. I don't know. I always like the idea of a tragic bad guy. And the
Yeah,
idea that she started off as just a very sweet girl who was just wanted, her father's approval and just wanted to live her life and not have to worry about all this stuff. And she's like, well, it's almost gotten me killed and all of this. Like she basically ends that episode hating her father. Uh, I don't know. I think it would be quite a tragic end for that character if she ends up in the same line of business. Like maybe partly as revenge against her father for something, but
maybe she starts off as a kind of Robin Hood type, stealing from the
yeah.
criminal to
But maybe
try
she
and
just slowly got corrupted along the way. It's like you watch a show like Breaking Bad. Like technically, he's a bad guy from the first episode. Like he's a Walter White, even from episode one. Not a nice man, really.
yeah,
But you see how he's got his intentions, at least at the beginning, were pure, and he's just slowly gets more and more corrupted, and by the end, he's just an out and out villain. And
yeah.
I can kind of see her character having a similar sort of arc.
Yeah, it's
But
the old saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it could be. I thought maybe she would be involved with like Intergang or something, and it's like doesn't just want to take over the family business. She wants to destroy the family business and then take it over.
yeah,
Maybe that would be interesting, but yeah,
yeah.
that's
But
obviously never
that's
happens.
one of the
It's
reasons
just
why.
fun to think about.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I, decided to, go the way I went with, introducing the first elements of Intergang. Mentioning Bruno Mannheim. Say that it was the same crime family that her father was a part of, and now who's in
Ties it
charge of it?
together.
Bruno Mannheim.
Yeah.
You know, um, but there's a lot of stuff that we did get payoffs on. Like for example, the kryptonite that got flushed down the drain. That's the
Yeah.
first kryptonite that Metallo gets powered with.
I
But
love that they did that. I mean, they even I love the fact that they actually bothered to write it into the dialogue. Like it's
yeah,
just like I found it on my excursions into the sewers or something like that. I think what the line was,
yep,
and it's just nice to tie it in. It's like instead of saying, "Well, where did this other kryptonite rock come from?" So, well, maybe it's the same one as the previous one we saw. And
yeah,
honestly, if you're gonna write an episode like that, I think it's the best way to go. And yeah, it's great that they tied it in like that. Obviously, season two weren't afraid to tie into some things from season one, just not others. It's kind of strange. I wonder where they actually drew the line
yeah,
when they were writing. Because
yeah,
also, like Professor Peterson, obviously is a season one character, and they didn't feel the need to get rid of Peterson.
yeah. And then we never saw him again except for the tie-in comic. They made mention of him a couple of times,
Mm.
but that was about it. The times that they made mention of him was um,
Now he was mentioned throughout seasons 3 and 4, like in
yeah,
Bureau.
body swap. He was mentioned,
I
because
think
when
Mindscape he was mentioned briefly as well. I
not
think.
quite.
I
Yeah,
think at one point they said that they were like getting in touch with Peterson's lab. Maybe they could send something to help or
no,
something. I think it was just
no, I think the mention of him was in Darlago's Ballistic.
right. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, now you say it, it was Darla Goes Ballistic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but
definitely.
he had mentions throughout seasons 3 and 4, but we never saw him. And
Yeah,
Peterson, I mean, Superboy needs that. He needs a scientist to help him because
yeah,
he's he's not super intelligent like the Silver Age version of the characters were.
hmm.
He needs a scientist that he can work alongside of and explain things. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Usually it's Star Labs or something like that, and in the whether it's in the comics or animated shows, and it's like
yeah,
even just obviously we did a commentary on the first 2 episodes of the Ruby Spears. show,
Yeah.
and Star Labs is in that as helping Superman, and I think they were helping Superman. They weren't just in it, were they? I thought they were actually helping
Well,
Superman with something in it.
they were in it, and they discovered the ancient starship, but it was mostly him doing everything.
Right, that's fair enough.
Like it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, the scientists have got their job and Superman's got his. They can't do each other's job. But yeah, like obviously Star Labs, you have scientists like that. Even in Lois and Clark, like after Emil Hamilton was introduced, they make reference to Star Labs a couple of times. Like I don't think they went there very often, but they made
They didn't
reference
go.
to the fact that
Yeah, they didn't go there very often.
but they referenced the
And
fact that he would on occasion when he needed the help,
yeah,
which
and
is good.
the Emil Hamilton character that we got in Lois and Clark, he appeared, I think, 3 times, and then he was replaced by a similar character, Dr. Klein,
Yeah,
at Star.
I liked Dr. Klein, but I prefer Hamilton. Like, I've said it to you before. I think my favourite episode of Lois and Clark is the first episode with Hamilton when he clones like Al Capone and Bonnie and
Yeah,
Clyde and Dillinger, and just a brilliant. It's not the best episode of the show, but it's my favourite episode because
yeah.
it's just so much fun, and I really like that version of Hamilton. Not enough to keep him around for season 5, but yeah,
Right.
just
Yeah,
because I think I've always just wanted to see Dwight Schultz in that role instead. But yeah,
and picking Dwight Schultz for that role, it's perfect.
yeah, he's basically just playing. He's still playing Hamilton, but he just was playing it the same way he did Barclay in
Yeah,
Star Trek.
and a
It's
little bit of Murdoch from
yeah,
A-Team.
especially in the flash forwards to the future when he was all like he had a big beard and all of that, and he was a little bit more frantic. That was probably more the Murdoch side.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, obviously the Portal episodes. You know, whatever happened to the Superman who went to that other Earth to raise the kid.
yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to. I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. I think it would have been nice to have one more Rhodes story in season 4. Because let's face it, we had 4 of them in season 3 and then none in season 4. Like it would have been nice to have one more episode to pay it off, maybe.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, technically, we got that in the special, the tie-in special. Although it was
what the comic,
yeah, it was
but
not done very well.
It's the worst issue of the tie-in comic, which is a shame because it's written by one of the best writers in comics. Like
Stan Berkowitz.
Yeah, it's like I have so much respect for that man. Like, I think he's one of the absolute comic geniuses. But somehow he managed to write the worst issue, not just the worst issue of Superboy, but even if you count the show as well, it's like the worst episode as well. It just didn't work. But
yeah, I mean, it
we
worked.
will get to that when we do our comic reviews. We'll come back to that at some point.
Yeah,
it
the
might
first
take us
half
a
of
while.
it worked. The second half was just utter trash.
Yeah, which is
and Mr. Berkowitz, I do apologize, but we're very opinionated on this. It was not a great way to end the series.
Yeah, which is a shame. I mean, yeah. Let's not continue on talking about that issue because at some point when we finished our comic reviews, we're going to have to talk about this all again. Otherwise, the final review will be only 10 minutes long. So we'll be like, I'll just go back and watch this video.
Yeah.
But,
there's a lot of things that, we never got a real payoff on. Whatever happened to Chaos after the 2-parter To Be Human?
Yeah. I would like to see him.
They rarely ever did an episode where the villain dies at the end. I mean, I think the only villain that really ever died at the end was the alien.
Yeah, I suppose it's if they're so powerful, like the alien, that imprisoning them wouldn't be an option. I suppose the writers had no other choice, but yeah, I do wonder what happens with that.
And my theory on the alien is this. Okay, um, the old saying of matter can neither be created nor destroyed.
Mm.
Okay,
Or is it energy? It's energy that
yeah,
can only be.
energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It just exists.
Mm.
The alien is energy. All Superboy did was freeze him. As soon as somebody shuts down that freezer, the crystallization, the crystals that he turned into, that are laying on the floor,
Yeah,
they're
they
going to
turn
thaw
back
out.
into mist, and
He's going to turn back into his purple form.
yeah,
You
that's an
know.
interesting one. Like, yeah, it's just again the mind sort of boggles at how good could another story with the alien have been, especially if they'd waited a couple of years and did it in season 3 when the show really sort of found its footing and
Yeah.
became the show that we love. Like, it's season 3. I would have loved to have seen what would happen with that, but again, it's just because it's season 1, I guess, that they just weren't interested in coming back to it. But
And yet there were things from season 1 that they did bring back for season 2, like
yeah,
Mixie,
like Mixie, like Peterson, like uh,
Leo.
Leo. Well, they brought Leo back just to kill him off, but which I'm glad they at least did that. Like, it's better than just starting season 2 and he's just mysteriously missing. Because
Yeah.
then we would have been wondering. That would have been a topic in this exact video. The question would have been, what happened to Leo? Like, we would
Although
just be like,
I gotta say, what happened to Leo was pretty creepy.
it certainly was. Yeah, it's like
I mean,
Lex murdered his best friend, his childhood friend.
well, I can see why he did it, because Leo would be the only one who could identify him, at
But
least
then
at
he was
first.
identified so quickly anyway. Like, it's
Yeah.
what I've always said. Like, just have Leo go into hiding until his identity is discovered.
Yeah, but the really creepy part is what happened afterwards. That episode when Lex supercharges Superboy's powers
Mm.
with the bus, and he's
Oh,
walking into their lair down the stairs, and
and the
there's a skull
skeleton.
sitting there. No, the skull. He pats it on the head and says, "Hello, Leo." So what you're telling me is that Lex afterwards took the body, cut the head off, and then stripped all the skin, muscle, and
Yeah.
organs from it just to
That
keep it as a trophy?
there's an R-rated missing episode for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, you have to wonder about. I mean, obviously, things like that is some of the things that make it creepy are the little details like that, as you say. But there's details that I'm amazed that they got away with. Full stop. It's like Metallo's first appearance when he cuts the doctor's throat, and then the next time you see him, he's covered in blood, like all
Yeah.
around his. Like, okay, it looks pretty pink, so there's no one going to think it's real, but still, how did they get away with that in 1988? Like, they're still squeamish about showing
because
too much blood.
because you didn't actually see him
But sometimes
cut.
it's just the difference of a bit of blood is the difference between an R-rated film or just an NC-7, like
Yeah.
PG-13 or whatever. And it's one of the main. Okay, when they made. It's a film I don't like, but when they made the director's cut for Batman versus Superman, it's like they made it R-rated for the Ultimate Edition. The only changes were that now there were a few more blood splats, and I think Batman says "fuck" at one point. Obviously,
And
the R rating is probably
also you
just
have all those sequences with Clark actually being a reporter.
yeah, but that doesn't increase the rating to an R rating
Yeah.
though. It's just literally all that changed the rating was a little bit of blood and one fuck, which you can
Yeah.
say anyway in a PG-13. Like, you're allowed one.
Yeah.
Like, it's so it's just a strange thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think of another loose end. Maybe we can do a sequel to this episode at some point. But unless you've got another example to talk about, maybe we should end
I'm
the episode.
trying to think here. Well, obviously, we've already talked about Mixie. We've talked about Sarah Danner.
Yeah. Did Inspector Henderson, come back for season 2, or was he just a season 1?
No. You're thinking of Lieutenant Harris.
I thought he was Henderson in Superboy.
No, he was Lieutenant Zeke Harris, played by Roger Preto, who actually did show up in season 3, but not as Harris.
Oh, that's weird. For some reason, I just always thought it was Henderson in Superboy, which is weird because that's a character I think was invented for the George Reeves show, which is a show that
he was actually invented for the radio show in the 40s.
Oh wow!
And then
so
he was brought over to the Superman series in the 50s with George Reeves, and then he was introduced in the comics.
See, this is why you're the Superboy fact checker, because you know this stuff and I don't.
Well, we all have our niches, so
absolutely. But yeah, I'm I've said it 1,000 times. I'm so appreciative. You've saved me so many Google searches.
Yep.
But
let's see. I mean,
yeah.
Well, obviously, a loose end is the carnival.
Yeah, like obviously we met the devil in that episode, and then we never see him again. Like we know there's no way Superman was able to stop him. He's the devil.
Yeah, and remember what he said at the end. I'll be seeing you again.
Mm.
And then, of course, as the angel of death from the episode with
Into the Mystery.
Thank you.
See, you've told me so many times in the last couple of weeks that now I'm telling you. I think I've forgotten in 2 different episodes of the podcast in the past month.
Yeah.
But you finally managed to, teach me.
Yeah. But remember what she says right at the end of the episode. Be seeing you. And then we never see her again.
Yeah. I wish I had a good enough story idea so we could write it ourselves, but maybe for season 6.
Well, I did make mention of her in Metallo's Blaze of Glory. She does show up, and
absolutely
she takes Metallo's soul with her. So
maybe Mr. DeVille can show up if we do an episode with John Constantine. That might be interesting.
Yeah, maybe he shows up in Metropolis and he's hunting DeVille.
Yeah,
and maybe the carnival shows up.
Exactly. Maybe he's got a job for Superman. Like it's like we need to venture into hell to rescue someone being held captive, and it's
Yeah.
Maybe he goes up against Mr. DeVille on his home territory this time, which might be an interesting way to take it. And maybe hell is like a twisted carnival in our version. That might be interesting.
Sense.
Yeah, like demon clowns and stuff.
Then again, it could just be like that episode of Voyager with the Q Continuum, where they saw the Q Continuum as something that they could understand, which is
like it was like a road, like a dirt road, next to like a small shack, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it's like just a road that goes on for infinity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got a story for this anyway, so
at least not yet.
At least not yet, but. Yeah, maybe we should hold off now on saying any more ideas, or any more examples rather of story threads that were left open, because I think it could be fun to do another episode of this. We could do a follow-up sequel episode.
Yeah, and you know what? Anybody watching, if you guys can think of anything that we didn't touch on, put it in the comments.
Leave it in the comments for us. We will read them out, and we'll discuss them as well. And obviously, the longer your comment, the more of it there is for us to read. Obviously, the more there will be for us to discuss. So don't just say like a one sentence, like, remember this. Like, say I think if it came back, it might have been interesting if they'd done this with it. Maybe give us some of your ideas for where you would have maybe liked to have seen it go.
Yeah.
I think that could be a really interesting thing. And let's face it, we always love hearing from the viewers because
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's been so many comments now that where we've looked at it and it's like, actually, I hadn't quite thought about it that way, and they sort of given us a lot to think about. But
Yeah, and of course, Mr. Carlin, if you're out there watching, which we know you are, if you can think of anything that you guys did in either seasons 1, 2, and 3, or even 4, that was never touched on again.
Here's something: who actually wrote Super Menace? Do you remember?
Who wrote Super Menace? Hang on, let me see.
See, I'm still, just because you mentioned Mike Carlin, and obviously he wrote so many episodes. I just wonder if that was one of his. And if it was, Mike, what do you think happened to the Red Kryptonite? Like, of all the people's opinions to find out what they think happened at the end of that scenario, like, he's probably the one that I most would like to hear.
Super Menace. Okay, let's see. Michael Maurer.
Michael Maurer.
Yep.
Is that the only episode he wrote? Because I can't say the name is too familiar. But either way, he wrote a great episode.
Yes, he did.
One of the best, in fact. Certainly one of the best from season 2. Top 5, maybe.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, especially if you count the 2-parters as single episodes, like I do. Like the Bizarro 2-parter doesn't count as 2 episodes for me. That's
wait a minute. He wrote 6 episodes of Superboy.
Oh wow. Well, maybe one we'll have to look up. Maybe if he's got a Twitter or something, like.
Okay, in season 2, he wrote 3 episodes, and that was, of course, Super Menace.
Yeah.
The episode right before it, which was Superboy Rest in Peace.
Right.
And the final episode of season 2, which was The Woman Called Tiger Eye. Oh, that's kind of an awful episode.
Yeah, I don't like that episode, to be honest. I think I said that when we did a commentary on it, like over a year ago. I think it's one of my least favorites. Did he? That's one that he co-wrote with Elia Salkind, isn't it? Or was that Johnny Casanova that Elia co-wrote with someone?
It was Johnny Casanova.
Right. Because I know that the woman that played Tiger Eye was Elia's girlfriend or his wife.
No, his wife.
So,
his wife at the time.
His wife.
She passed away
it's like.
Yeah,
so that's why I was sort of wondering maybe if Elia co-wrote that episode, but.
And then season 3, he wrote Superboy Lost, and then it looks like he co-wrote 2 of your favorites in season 3 with Stan Berkowitz, Road to Hell Parts 1 and 2.
Oh wow! So I feel very foolish for not recognizing his name.
Well, I mean, remember,
I'm sorry about that. If you happen to be watching, I do apologize. But
yeah, but remember, when we think of the Rhodes episodes, we really just think of Stan Berkowitz.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. And obviously, John Francis Moore co-wrote Roads Not Taken as well. Like, or at least he co-wrote the story. He's like one show credit is Roads Not Taken.
Let's see.
I'm sure I'm right about that, because I'm pretty sure when we looked it up to see what episodes of the show he wrote, I was surprised to see that. If I'm wrong, let me know. Maybe I've actually stumped the Superboy fact checker for the first time in history.
Well, they don't say that anything here. Although here's something funny from Road to Hell Part 1. It says under goofs, and this is on IMDb. Lex Luthor is technically the same age as Superboy and underwent plastic surgery at the beginning of season 2 in order to age himself and be unrecognizable to Superboy. since on this alternate Earth, Superboy is still a child, there would have been no reason for Lex to have had surgery in the first place. So he should still look like he did in season 1.
Yeah. Which is the same thing we've said about, Road's Not Taken Part 2. It's like the Lex in the Sovereign Earth. Although, presumably, if he's an enemy of the Sovereign, maybe he had the plastic surgery there to escape the same way. Like, he didn't want the Sovereign to recognize him.
Theorized that the reason behind that is that, Warren Eckworth was a part of the regime, and Lex deciding that he wanted to get close to the Sovereign to try and kill him.
Yeah.
Kills
totally
Warren
works for
Eckworth,
me.
takes his place, and then Sovereign he's not stupid.
No.
He realizes that there's something different, and he's like, you're not Warren Eckworth.
Totally works for me. I mean, as far as headcanons go, like I think that's a pretty flawless one. But yeah, by the way, I just looked up John Francis Moore on IMDb, and his 2 credits on Superboy are Road's Not Taken Part 1 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So story by credit though. I don't think he wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
But,
so
when you look, like Road's Not Taken Part 1, if you look up on IMDb, the writers it just has Stan Berkowitz, John Francis Moore side by side. So it's hard to tell who did what. But Mike Carlin, if you're watching, or even John Moore, if you're watching, because I know that he's aware of us because Mike tagged him in a post when we did one of the comic reviews. Like to say, it's people are reviewing your work, John.
Yes.
But, yeah. So maybe if you could let us know, some of this stuff. It's just maybe there are ideas behind the scenes. Like even if you only wrote 2 episodes, maybe you had ideas about other episodes. I'm assuming you were connected, especially since Mike Carlin brought you on from DC Comics at the time. So, presumably there was a writer's room.
Yeah, of course, he was also, one of the writers on The Flash.
Yeah, he wrote more episodes of The Flash than Superboy, I think.
Yeah, 10 episodes of The Flash.
Yeah, although technically he wrote more stories for Superboy than if you count the comic.
Yeah.
But it's funny how things work out like that. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. We are going to leave it there, I think, because we want to have some material to do a sequel to this video at some point.
Absolutely.
But yeah, as we said, please leave us comments. Like, let us know like story threads that you wish they'd picked back up again. Give us as much detail about what you would have liked to have seen done with it, as I say. And yeah, we'll read them out. We'll discuss it, and yeah, we'll give you a shout out.
We'll do an episode of viewer mail.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're already planning a viewer mail episode anyway. There's a question I've put on Instagram. But I'll ask it again now so you can answer this question too. 3 very simple questions. What's your favourite episode of Superboy? What's your least favourite episode of Superboy? And who is your favourite guest star from Superboy? Let us know all of these answers. If you want to give us reasons why as well, that would be very helpful. But we will be reading these responses on the show at some point, and we'll be discussing your answers, saying whether we agree, disagree, our reasons why, all that good stuff. It's going to be a bit of fun, bit of a shout out, and yeah, I think it's just fun to get the community involved from time to time. Yep. So yeah, if you're bound to have ideas in mind for what your favourite and least favourite episodes are. My least favourite episode is probably Obituary for a Superhero, just because, it's... We'll talk about that in the episode itself, Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to go off on a rant.
Yeah, we don't want you going off on a rant.
Not now. I mean, we were going to say this was a short episode. This is 50 minutes long, so this is longer than some of our regular episodes.
Yeah. I will say this. My least favorite episode is a season 2 episode. It's Johnny Casanova.
Yeah. It's not one of my favorite. I will say it's a guilty pleasure just because I like the actor that plays Johnny Casanova. I think he's entertaining enough that it makes the episode watchable. But the episode itself is a piece of shit. It's a really bad episode, but it's carried by a very what's the word? charismatic. It's a very charismatic performance in that central role in that episode. It's the only thing that carries it. But yeah, that'll be fun. We'll definitely talk about that when we do the episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment, ring that bell. Thank you. Take care, guys. See you next time.